Thank you, Seth. Again, my name is Catherine Dunbar, and I will be moderating today's conversation. I am a middle-aged white woman with short brown hair and blue eyes. I'm wearing glasses today so I can read. My background is a field of sunflowers because 'tis the season of sunflowers here in August. So we're going to start with introductions here in just a minute, but as Seth said, we really appreciate you all joining us for the webinar, and we're grateful to our panelists today for joining us from Envision Unlimited and for sharing their expertise. The majority of the webinar will cover questions, as Seth said, that you guys have submitted. I just wanted to share a little bit of information and context for today's webinar. Remote supports and technologies are broad terms to describe different devices, tools, applications, and more used by people receiving services in comparison to traditional supports provided by direct support staff. These types of technologies include everything from fall sensors to smoke detectors to two-way audio communication, video, doorbells, personal alert devices, and so on and so on. There are dozens that I couldn't even begin to list them all. Another type of remote supports involves the use of cameras or closed caption TVs, which is a very hot topic right now. Specific to cameras and CCTVs, CQL stance is that in-home cameras used as surveillance is a rights restriction. We've produced a capstone article and an infographic guide about that topic. As you'll hear today, one of our panelists, Jesse, who will introduce himself in a minute, does use a camera in his home. However, Envision Unlimited and its Human Rights Committee also views this as an ongoing rights restriction. But in providing Jesse with the education, experience, and exposure to make an informed decision about the use of a camera in his home, he still chooses to use one regardless of his designation as a rights restriction. Something else to note for this webinar is that Envision Unlimited operates in the state of Illinois. And as you all know, each state is very unique, involving regulations, funding, service delivery, etc. Envision Unlimited's approach to remote supports is directly impacted by how Illinois handles these topics. So their experience is very likely different than what is going on in your state. With that, we won't be able to address state-specific questions, and we absolutely advise you to contact your state DD agency if you need additional guidance. Also, through today's webinar, you may hear the acronym CILA, C-I-L-A. This stands for Community Integrated Living Arrangement, an Illinois waiver service for a residential setting such as a group home, family home, or apartment with 8 or less adults with developmental disabilities living together. One last item to mention is that on today's webinar, you might hear people using identity first language instead of people's first language. For those with lived experience, the language they use is, of course, their choice. As providers or organizations, it's important to be mindful of people's preferences involving language and its impact on respect, identity, and overall culture. Now that you have all of that background and context, we can get started. I am proud to welcome our 3 panelists from Envision Unlimited who will be introducing themselves. Tina?
Thank you so much. My name is Tina Lowry. I am the Director of Quality Assurance over at Envision Unlimited. I use she, her pronouns. I am a white woman with dark brown hair, blue eyes, and I have dark frame glasses. Behind me is a blurred background. I also happen to be a person who identifies with a developmental and intellectual disability. I have autism. It's completely invisible, but it is here in my life.
Kristen?
Hi, my name is Jesse. I'm African, Black American.
Talk a little bit about your role at Envision.
I'm an associate. I live at one of the remote homes. And that's it.
That's good. And I'm Kristen Salkas. I am a light-skinned woman with dark hair and glasses. I'm here with Jesse to his right. And my role at Envision is Director of Innovation, where I get to do cool projects like our remote supports project.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for those introductions. So now we're just going to ask some general questions of you, and talk to us a little bit about what your remotes consist of, Jesse.
It's consists of independence. I have a camera in here.
Where's your camera located?
It's in the living room. Um, I have I have a lot of freedom when I'm here by myself. It's consisted of a lot of things.
Do you have anything in case of an emergency?
I have like the button on the camera that I can just push and my call someone, and then they'll call my house manager, and then they'll get emergency people over here, like the police or the ambulance or something like that, if something arises.
So you've got a camera, you've got an emergency button.
Emergency button. That's basically it.
Okay. Can you talk to us a little bit about the role remote supports play at Envision Unlimited?
So I'll go ahead and start, and Jesse, you can chime in.
Yeah.
So remote supports are an option for folks living at Envision. We have 24-hour SILA supports, and remote supports are part of that 24-hour support service system. This is kind of an option for folks that maybe want to transition into more independent style of living, or there are some people that are just going to be in remote supports for the time that they're supported by us. So it's kind of one menu item that we have at Envision for living. Anything you want to add?
And it's independence. It's a good set section, a good placement for me and stuff like that. So
Okay, good. What other things besides, what other technologies are you using?
using smartphones, we're
Okay,
using computers, we're using laptops. It's a lot of things we're using for remote support living. So and it actually helps us out and stuff. We're using cellular phones and stuff like that.
okay. Are there other things used for Envision Unlimited?
So we do have some other technologies that we use at Envision. Jesse, you're not necessarily using all of them. We have an application called MeMinder. That's kind of a reminder app that we've been using, that we've been piloting with some folks. And we've been kind of perusing into using watches that detect falls for some folks where, falling might be an inhibitor to them living in a more independent setting. So we've been looking into those fall detection watches.
So they can live in a more support living, like a setting like this.
Okay.
A key thing with the different technologies is every single person is going to have different technology that is individual to them. So what works best for Jesse isn't going to possibly be the same that works best for a different person. So each person has their own supports that are kind of cultivated for them.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a quote unquote ideal person that remote supports are designed for?
What do you think, Jesse? You've had some thoughts about this. The ideal person to live in remote, like a remote setting like the one you live in.
It's designed. I will say it's designed for the person that's able to do everything on their own, but it can be designed for someone who is disabled and they're able to have some type of assistance or type of support. So it's designed for both.
I think you've identified some traits in yourself that you've been able to utilize now that you've been in remote support. So you talk about the word independent a lot, and you've given some examples of things that you've been able to do once you're in here that you weren't able to do in another setting?
I'm able to take the bus on my own. I'm able to call a pace if I need one. I'm able to call an Uber. I'm able to walk to the store by myself. I'm able to do a whole lot of things. I'm able to do my own banking. Um, it's it's so much stuff that I'm able to do that it's a lot of freedom that goes with it.
I think based on what you said, Jesse, the ideal person for remote supports is somebody who's going to take advantage of that option and who really wants it and is really excited about it.
Right.
I know you wanted this for a long time.
I wanted this for a very
You
long
wanted it
time.
for a long time because when he was living with 24-hour staff, he wasn't given the opportunity to utilize a lot of these skills. So I would say first and foremost, the type of person who should be in remote supports is the type of person who wants to take advantage of that setting.
Who
Okay.
actually seriously wants it.
Sure, absolutely. Okay, thank you. Is there anything that you think remote support should be used for versus what they should not be used for?
Okay.
Kristen,
So
you're
I
it.
mean, we've already kind of mentioned that we really want remote supports to be individualized. So
Okay.
it's really going to be, how is somebody doing in this environment versus how they would be doing in an environment with 24/7 staff. They should see this is a less restrictive environment than one with staff. And we should be able to see that when they're moving into this environment. I know we've talked a lot about cameras being a rights restriction, and they are. But somebody living in an environment with 24-hour staff where they are being restricted in that environment, it's kind of one versus the other. What's going to be a better environment where somebody can thrive? And we definitely you need that human rights aspect. We need the human rights committee to make sure that the cameras are giving people more rights than they are taking away. So I definitely support that process. Envision has a good process for that. So it's really hard to give you like a one-off answer. It really is going to depend on the individual.
Sure. Okay, thank you. So typically do remote support start with, a person, a human, I guess, supporting someone, and then does it transition to remote supports? Like what is that? Or can someone just start with remote supports instead of human supports? What's that process like?
So right now at Envision, we have more demand for remote supports than we have remote support homes. So our
Okay.
goal is to get everybody into a home like this one if they want to be here. We have not yet taken anybody directly into remote supports, but I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do that. It would definitely be a goal of ours. And I know there are other states that do just that. Ohio is one of them. You kind of get placed into an environment that's going to benefit you from the get-go.
Okay. Thank you. Um, the next questions are around benefits and impact. So Jesse, really want to hear from you about what quality of life improvements you've experienced as a result of remote supports and other technologies.
It's it's seriously helped me. My attitude, my well-being, everything has changed, because I have a little more freedom. You know, I'm able to do everything on my own,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the benefit of it. And then you still have support from staff, but at the same time, you have the benefit of doing everything on your own, and you have no issues, no problems, or nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Do
can't.
you do you feel like you have enough support from staff when you need it?
When I need it, I will ask staff for support, but sometimes I'm able to do the stuff on my own. But if I need the support, like on certain things, I will ask them and they will help me. So I normally get the support that I seriously need. So if you need support, you go to your staff or your house manager and they will seriously help you out.
Okay.
Can I share the story about when I came to visit you for the first time after you moved here?
Go ahead.
So when I visited Jesse, it was about a month after you moved in. And I just wanted to check in and see how he was doing. I wasn't sure. It's a new environment. Anybody moving into a new house, you suspect that there might be some road bumps there. As soon as I sat down at the table, I asked how you were doing, and you said, "My whole demeanor has changed."
Yep, my whole demeanor has changed.
And that was pretty cool to see. And it was pretty cool to hear some of the stories you were telling. Like you just had more confidence in yourself.
Right, more confidence in myself, no anger, no frustration, no anything. And I'm not scared to be by myself. I was never when I was in a 24-hour home, I was never scared to be by myself. And I'm happy. I'm uppity. I'm ready to go to work. I'm benefit from everything that has benefit from this. So it's a good placement if you seriously want to do it. So I advise anyone that wants to do it, they can do it. Because I
Sounds
do.
like it's had a great impact on you, Jesse.
Yes, it had a very good impact on me.
Yeah. So, what other quality of life improvements have you observed as a result of the remote supports Tina and Kristen is like from the agency as a whole? I mean, obviously, Jesse has had great experience. Is that typical, or tell us about the rest of your organization that's engaged in remote supports and other technologies?
I mean, I would say at the very least, people's lives stayed pretty much the same at the very least.
Yeah.
We do have some folks, they were going out in the community a lot before, they were going out in the community a lot now. But I would say that Jesse's experience is pretty typical. We have another person that I can think of who moved into remote support. She got into a lot of just interpersonal conflict. Like she just wasn't confident in herself, and that was coming out in interpersonal stuff. And that has really improved since she is living in a remote support environment. So I would say, there's two prime examples there, and at the very least, people's lives are the same.
There's also less intrusiveness from the staff in people's intimate lives. People are freer to have relationships in a way that they want to have and experience romantic and intimate relationships with other people. And they're not being micromanaged by staff. So it's beautiful to see relationships blooming between people and in a way that they should be welcome and free to have these intimate relationships with people that they choose to.
Yep.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about policies and assessments. We had lots of questions around this. So talk to us a little bit about some of the policies that you guys have that involve remote supports.
So until Jesse or anyone else who is utilizing remote support has the ability to turn off that camera or turn it on, this will always be considered a rights restriction where Jesse or anyone else who has a remote support in their life will have the ability to come before our Human Rights Committee to discuss how this rights restriction is impacting their life. So for Jesse, he had this opportunity to come before the Human Rights Committee. Jesse, do you want to share a little bit about that experience?
Yeah. I was okay with it with the policies because the first thing they said is that I needed it in my home and I didn't have an issue with it. So, you know, that's basically all I can say about it because I didn't have an issue with it. It was fine with me, you know. And that was the first thing my old my old staff from my old house said, you're going to have a camera in your new home, basically, and you're gonna need that for your protection. So I was like, okay, that's fine. I'm like, no big issue.
I think you told me as long as it's not in my bedroom.
Long as it's not in my
And it's
bedroom,
not.
Right.
long as it's not in any other places, like any other places, I was fine with it. You know, the camera can be where it's at. I'm fine, but long as it's not anywhere else. So I was fine with the
So,
camera.
so Jesse, do you see that camera as less intrusive than having a staff with you 24 hours a day?
I'm better off with the camera than having a staff with me 24 hours a day. Because
All right.
I can deal with the camera than deal with the staff 24 hours a day. As long as I can, if I need an emergency or I need to call someone, all I gotta do is push that button, let them know, they'll call
Mhm.
someone, and then I'm fine. So
Go
I'm
on.
I'm fine. I'm fine with that camera.
Okay. Um, do you have an assessment to help make the decision on remote support, who gets them, and what kind of remote supports they may need or other technologies?
Yeah, so we kind of borrowed, the state of Ohio has an assessment that they use for everybody living in their, I think it's everybody in their waiver services. And so we've kind of adapted that. And how our assessment works is it kind of goes through different areas of somebody's living activities and says, okay, what if they lived in this remote support environment? What kind of support would they need in each of these areas?
Okay.
Um, and it's a give and a take. So there are some times where, we can change our remote supports in order to accommodate somebody who has a need. And then there are some times where we encourage somebody to work on certain skills so that it would be easier for them to, oh, thank you, Seth, for putting that assessment in there. And sometimes it would be easier for somebody to work on a certain skill in order to be able to live in the environment that we've set up at Envision. And we do things in a very particular way at Envision. I don't want to say we're the end all be all. There are a lot of different ways that this can be done, but organizationally, we found that this is the best way for us. So we've had it go both ways. We've changed our practices and we've asked people to kind of work on their individual stuff, and it's worked for a dozen people. Yeah.
And
For me,
Kristen, you were mentioning also, I'm sorry, Jesse. I want to make a point of this too. Kristen, you were mentioning that this assessment also feeds into our organizational practices to also see where we need to figure out working with state entities, working with different local entities to figure out where we can do better as an organization as well to support a vast majority of people that aren't currently able to receive remote supports because of where we are limited as an organization as well. So I'm sorry about that, Jesse.
No,
You were saying.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I think the biggest limitation right now is medical or medication related needs. In Illinois, we have very strict medication regulations in ASILA, and we can't just forego those because somebody's under remote support. So right now, how do you get your meds?
my staff passes out to me.
Yeah, so your staff come at a certain time.
They come at a certain
and they give you
time.
meds.
They give me my meds at 8 in the morning, and they give my meds at 8 at night. So
Illinois doesn't currently allow for like medication boxes to be used, medication dispensation technology to be used. So that's like it's like a huge roadblock to a lot of people getting these
Mhm.
supports that would benefit from them. So yeah, we're working on it. We're doing what we can.
Okay. How do you guys ensure quality and, reduce liability with the use of technologies and remote supports?
Called Goldilocks theory.
Exactly.
Yeah, it really is. We'll always refer back to Goldilocks theory. The assessments are there, the policies are there, and everything is there. because you want to check the box, but essentially you have to continuously go back to the person who's receiving that individualized support. And what you're doing for one person isn't going to be the same for the next person or the next person or the next person. And you have to keep realizing that under supporting is just as bad as over supporting a person. So we have to be the porridge can't be too hot, the porridge can't be too cold, and our supports have to be just right. So we have to keep going back because when you do an assessment on one day, that's just one viewpoint into how that person needs those supports and services on that one day. And on a person's best day, that's just it. That was their best day. And so we can't hold people to their best day standard. So we have to keep going back to understand what is the best support for a person. And that takes multiple days of what does a support look like for a person? What do they need on one day might not be the same help or support that they need on another day because they're having executive functioning concerns because of that spoon theory is overwhelming them. So it's over and over and over again looking at Goldilocks theory of how we can best support people.
Okay, thank you. What are some of your best practices? What have you learned about addressing emergency situations? Earlier, Jesse talked about a button, that he can press on his camera to kind of summon staff. Obviously, you can call 911 or other emergency services. Have you found any other types of things that you can do for emergency situations?
There's a whole bunch. Again, this goes back to what works best for one person might not work best for another, but there's a whole bunch of different technology out there. I remember growing up, there was those necklaces that you could press that would immediately link to an emergency line. So that's another type of technology that you can have that automatically supports people based upon what they might need to immediately connect to someone. They could push a button because they might not have the dexterity to dial 911. So it, again, each person is going to need a different type of support. So whether it's they have speed dial on their cell phone to a different type of technological support in their home based upon that fall technology that automatically senses it for them, it's going to be based upon that person. There's so much out there. So much.
Yeah. Something, not all that we can cover during our first webinar around technology. So, okay, so let's talk, unless Jesse or Kristen, you have something to add to that? To add to what? No?
And I add to that, what do we come up with a technology for, people that can't push that button and they're blind, or someone that is disabled and they not able to walk or something like that. How are we need some type of technology like that. Or someone that speaks a different language. We need a technology like that too. So those are options that I came up with.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk a minute about rights, restrictions, privacy, and consent. So one of the biggest questions that we had arise was, what if there are more than one person living in a home? What if someone does not consent to the use of common area camera? What do you do in that situation? Or has that even arisen?
Well, the way that we kind of set things up at Envision is the home comes with the remote support system. So if you do not want to live in a remote support environment, then unfortunately you're going to have to change your living arrangement. We have not run into that personally. You do have a roommate?
Yeah, I have a
And
roommate. Yes.
you're kind of both have similar feelings about
Yeah,
this.
we have similar feelings about it, and there's not a problem. You know, it's not an issue. But if someone else would have came in here and they would have saw that camera and they knew nothing about it, they probably would have an issue or a problem with it.
Mhm.
But me and the other guy that lives here, we don't have a problem with it. But someone else, you never know, they probably have an issue or a problem with it, and they'll give you that option. You want to live in this type of environment, or do you want to live in a different type of environment?
Yeah, so
And
we'd
they
have
give you
to,
that option.
yeah, we'd have to offer a different living arrangement that didn't
Sure.
include cameras for that individual. But because we're under, these are agency owned SILAs, that's how organizationally we have to do things. Obviously, if somebody had their own home, owned their own home, things would be different. We couldn't tell them what to do. But because they're agency owned and run, that's the way that we do it. I don't think that's an ideal situation, but it's kind of what we're doing.
Right now. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
I
Um,
do want to offer a caveat here that if cameras were being utilized for surveillance purposes, that if the moment a person moved into the house, that that person said, I don't want the camera on, you should turn the cameras off. Automatically, that human rights restriction needs to note that the cameras need to turn off the moment someone moves in and does not consent for the cameras to be in use. So
Absolutely.
that that human rights restriction should be respected in that sense.
okay. So along those lines, Tina, you've already talked about how Envision Unlimited, views the use of cameras as a rights restriction because people can't turn them on and off independently. Um, how often are those reviewed? How often are those rights restrictions reviewed by your committee?
Again, it's independent to each person. So it is each person based upon how they want to come before the Human Rights Committee for their rights restriction. For some people, they say that they want to come back before the Human Rights Committee every 3 months to review this rights restriction that is in their life, that has been endorsed by that Human Rights Committee, because they feel that it's more important to review that rights restriction more frequently. Some people have it that it's on an annual basis. Absolutely no human rights restriction is endorsed longer than annually. So, but each human rights restriction that is endorsed by the Human Rights Committee is specific to that individual, no longer than 1 year.
Okay, thank you. Um, how do you distinguish between a remote support and a rights restriction, or are there certain technologies that wouldn't be considered a rights restriction, or is everything considered a rights restriction if it could possibly infringe upon, someone's right to privacy or other rights?
Um, and Kristen, please feel free to correct me, but currently, right now, under the state of Illinois, in order for us to continue to be a 24/7 SILA, there needs to be a camera in our remote supports. And so, because that camera is there, automatically the remote supports at Envision Unlimited automatically are rights restrictions. There
Okay.
might be other remote supports that are added onto that camera that may feel like a rights restriction, but the person can opt not to do it. So, like the Me Minder that Kristen mentioned earlier, that is an incentive program that Kristen has gift cards that if a person completes so much of it, they earn gift cards for completing part of the Me Minder. But a person has a right and a choice to complete it or not to complete it. It's not something that's required in their life that they have to do. So those aren't right restrictions for Me Minders to be as a remote support in a person's life. Person has choice and is to utilize that support. If a person did have fall technology that was monitoring their movements, that would be indicative of needing to go through a human rights committee because it's tracking movement. It's tracking where a person's going, how their body is in the plane of existence, if you will. So that would be something that we need to take into consideration with that committee as well.
Okay. What happens if a parent, if they're the guardian or a guardian, uh, doesn't agree with the use of that technology? Two different questions.
We had that happen.
Yeah, we had that happen, and
Happens.
yeah.
So
So
tell us about that.
somebody was. You can tell the story. Don't use his name though.
I'm not gonna use his name, but it was the parent didn't want the camera in the house, and we had to tell them that that's there for a reason. It's for emergencies and everything, and for some reason the guardian didn't want the person to live here because of that reason.
I think the guardian was worried that the camera wouldn't be enough support for the
Right,
person.
it wouldn't be enough support.
And
The
so
camera wouldn't be enough support.
yeah, and so we kind of had to brainstorm and think about, okay, well then, is it better for this person to stay in their current environment? Is it better for them to move into remote supports, or is it better for them to move to a like a different environment? And the decision was for that person to stay in their current home, but they're working towards moving to remote supports. And I actually don't know how much work the individual himself needs to do. I think it's more of a let's kind of make sure that everything is going to be well aligned and make sure that this person has their supports aligned. I don't think they need to change anything about themselves.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing the National Guardianship Advocacy book there, because that is something that Envision Unlimited absolutely sees guardians as an important support in a person's life, but guardians are guardians in supporting people in making decisions that are in alignment with what that person wants for their life. Guardians shouldn't put their own ethics or their own values ahead of that of the person that they're helping to support with making decisions. So if you ever need that, that guidebook is really wonderful in supporting guardians with how to support a loved one or how to support someone else in their life with making some pretty interesting decisions, from medical to moving to jobs and so much more.
Thank you. So some of the questions that were asked under independence and self-direction, again, I'm going to remind people to go to their state DD division to ask specific questions around how self-direction, especially, can be paired with, the use of technology or remote supports. And we've talked a little bit about, remote supports and other technologies really helping people become more independent. But Jesse, would you mind sharing just one or two other things that where your remote supports have made you, obviously they've made you more confident, but what are some of the other things? What do you wish remote supports could do that it cannot right now? Is there anything there? Sorry for the pop quiz there.
You threw a hard one at me.
So what has made you more independent?
It's hard to stump Jesse, so congrats, Catherine.
Yeah.
Me.
I can think of one if you can't.
Yeah, you could think.
I know.
I can't think of one right now.
I know one goal that you're working on is to take your medication by yourself.
Yeah, take my medication by myself.
Because
that's my number one goal.
And I already mentioned, Illinois, their rules about medication and SILAs. That's why we have to overcome that.
So that's my number one goal, is for me to take my own medication. So when I can just leave, I can leave when I want to, come back when I want to. I don't have to worry about, oh, I have to come back and take my meds. I have to rush back home and take my meds. And and stuff like that because I want to be out longer. So that's one of my number one goals is for me to take my own meds independently on my own. So I don't have to worry about staff giving me my meds all the time. I could just do it myself.
Okay.
So that's one of my goals, for me to be more independent. Because everything else I know how to do. I know how to shop. I know how to pay my bills. I know how to
Mhm.
clean. I know how to cook. I know how to do my own laundry. All that, all those things. But my number one goal is for me to able to take my own meds.
Okay. Yeah. Again, because of the rule in Illinois, which
Right. The
not,
rules and
yeah,
restrictions in Illinois is a little different.
I'm quite familiar. So thank you for that, Jesse. Another question, how do you prepare people to use the technologies and, to kind of transition from, because Jesse, you've said that you've transitioned from 24-hour supports with people where you're, 24-hour with staff to remote supports where you only have staff for a certain period of time a day. What was
Yeah.
that transition process like for you?
It was, I had to visit. I had to do what was it, training. I had to stay for like 4 days, a trial run and stuff.
Okay.
And then after those four trial runs, if I liked where I stayed and the place where I was at, I just made up that mind to say I want to stay because I'm actually my own guardian. So I told the house manager and I told her directive that I wanted to stay. So
Okay.
I just I just stayed. I liked the trial. I went through the trial. Some days I was here by myself. Some days I was here with a staff, and I was able to do a lot of things by myself.
I think during that time we were trying to figure out like what level of staffing was going to be best for you.
Right.
So I think at first we kind of overdid it with the staff.
Yeah.
Then we kind of pulled away.
Overdid it with the staff.
Yeah, so then
But
we
it was an
pulled
overnight
away.
staff here, and I was like, why is overnight staff here?
Yeah. So, but I mean, that was all kind of part of the process.
Right.
And I
It was
know
all part of the process.
it wasn't ideal, but you were very understanding of
I was
it.
very
That was part of the
understanding of it.
process.
And then most of the time I was here by myself because I didn't have another associate here with me because he he did his trial run, but after that he came back Friday, and then it was okay. But at the time I was okay by myself, but then I was starting to like, am I going to get someone in this house with me, or I'm just going to be here by myself? And I kept asking that question. So
Gotcha. Okay. Let's talk very, very briefly about billing. We had lots of questions around billing. Again, please talk to your state office about billing. Um, how are remote supports paid for in Illinois?
It is a 60D home and community based waiver, the same as a traditional SILA.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Okay. Are there different assistive technologies like other technologies that are paid for through the waiver?
So
Go ahead.
I was going to say they are available. So in
Okay.
Illinois, there are certain types of assistive technologies that you can get reimbursed for on the waiver. Things in Illinois are changing right now, and you're not able to get reimbursed for the same things that you were when kind of we started our remote support program. So it's definitely going to vary by state. I wish I could kind of give more
Sure.
guidance on that.
No, that's okay. Um, yeah, like you said, it's going to be different for every state. Okay, so let's talk a minute. Some of the burning questions were around if remote supports are an alternative to direct support. I think we've indirectly answered that question, but I think people would like a direct answer.
So it's not necessarily an alternative. It's what fits right for that person. Each person is different, and each person is going to have supports that work best for them. Some people are going to work and be supported and have an amazing life in traditional supports. Whereas you're hearing now, Jesse loves remote supports. It's given him the freedom that he wants. And yes, there's still more we can do with remote supports here in Illinois to support Jesse better, especially if we can get rules and regulations to change around medication administration. But each person is just that. They're their own individual, and supporting them in the way that they are going to have the best quality of life is important for you to help them where they want to live, where they want to work, where they want to volunteer, and where they want to spend their time.
So, how do you find that balance between the use of remote supports and the use of a DSP coming in and providing that support directly?
I wish I had a straight answer, but I know like you did so much trial and error and
Right, there's so much trial and error.
you know what I will
Yep.
say? I will say there were times when Jesse really advocated for himself and said, "No, I want more time alone. I want more time without staff."
Right.
And we had to listen. And so we had to give him that opportunity to do that. So I would say, somebody is going to know their own supports best. It's not an end all be all. You can always try something and see if it works for the organization, see if it works for the person, but why not? You need a good reason to say no.
Okay. How many hours of support do you get? How many hours of direct support from a person do you get right now, Jesse?
I don't know. I don't know how many hours you get.
I will say the time that they're here and the time that they leave. I think that's mostly all the support I get.
You have time in the morning and time in the
And right,
afternoon.
time in the morning and time in the afternoon is mostly all the support I get because at night, I don't really need no support because by that time I'm going to bed or I'm in my room. So, but most of the time I need the support will be in the afternoon and in the morning.
Okay.
And Jesse, they're just there to pass medications primarily, right?
Yeah.
Well, what else do your staff do when they're here?
They help us cook. Sometimes,
Oh,
sometimes, sometimes they cook, sometimes we cook, you know. It's it's they help you, but they help my other housemate how he does his laundry, the dishes and stuff. They support him and stuff like that, teach him how to do stuff because he came from a house that did most of the stuff for him. So they had to help him a little bit, and now he's learning to do all that stuff on his own. So it's a lot of support when you actually need it.
So it's working for you right now.
It's working for me right now.
Okay. Are there other innovative and creative approaches that you guys use to help with either what a DSP could do, or to help a DSP do their job more easily when it comes to providing support to people? You talked about MeMinder. Are there other things that you guys have found very effective, considering the limitations that you have under the rule?
Oh,
I know, I guess this isn't true for Jesse's, but I know that in some of our other remote support homes, the folks who live there will text their staff. They'll text their house manager. And they have like a good personal relationship with her. So if they need something, they can text and be like, "Hey, this is what's going on," and they can get a direct answer pretty quickly.
I normally call my house manager if I need something or I need help with something or need certain things in my home, I would just call her on the phone.
Okay. So there's someone available to you. Is there someone monitoring when you do have the cameras? Is there someone monitoring them all the time?
So we utilize a company called Rest Assured, and they are the ones monitoring. During that time, we also have a staff on call. So there's a kind of a communication chain between the company that runs the cameras and then our personal staff. This is what they do, so they've kind of perfected that
Okay.
communication chain.
Okay.
Jesse, how do you know when the is on?
When that red light pops on, when a red light pops on, that's when I know it's on. When it's off, I know it's not on.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Um, Seth has been being attentive to the Q&A from the audience. So Seth, if you want to um, pose some questions to us.
Yeah, absolutely. So it was referenced a couple of times, the Me Minder app. Can you guys describe that, what it does, how it's used?
I can talk about that. Jesse, you're not using it, but we've talked about you can start. So this is an app that's specifically made for people with IDD, and it uses videos, pictures, kind of step-by-step voice and written commands to remind somebody about something. So how we've used it is one of the folks that lives in a remote support home has a pet guinea pig, and it reminds her to feed the guinea pig and change the water. So it'll like pop up at a certain time, and there'll be a picture of the guinea pig, and it'll say, "Hey, it's time to feed him." And then another one uses it to do step by step on how to make certain foods. So we've gone through it and we've done like the step by step on how to make scrambled eggs. So we've taken pictures of each step to remind her of like all the different steps to go through in order to make the scrambled eggs. So those are just two examples of how we've used it.
Okay.
Um, and it was referenced a little bit earlier, but maybe just to kind of recap and refresh, what other types of apps are on people's devices or on your devices?
There are so many different apps on people's devices. So Jesse, you mentioned Uber, right?
Uber,
Yeah.
uh, Pace,
That's our public transit app.
public transit. There's there's money apps. There's all type of stuff. There's all type of stuff on the phones that you can use. Bank
Do you
apps,
have Google Maps? Google Maps on your phone
Google
too?
Maps. Yep, got Google Maps that
Mhm.
can talk to you, give you directions to get to certain places.
We often
Um,
get hung up on the idea that specific apps need to be ideal just because a person has a specific diagnosis. But in a lot of households, we have Google, Alexa, even that help us with setting a timer as we're baking. We have Lyft and we have Uber on our phones for when we're traveling. We have Google Maps or Waze to help us navigate the world around us. These are the same apps that everyone uses and are beneficial for people who want to navigate their world in by utilizing remote supports. So even like a Google app for being able to schedule your day, doing if somebody wants to share where they are, you can use a Life 360 that has shared spaces. All of the apps that you would normally use, these are the same opportunity apps that you can utilize in a remote support.
Thank you.
We described it at the very beginning, but to refresh the audience, could you explain what a Scylla is again?
So
Ascilla is, oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead, Tina.
Okay, CILA is CILA. It's the acronym for Community Integrated Living Arrangement. And the reason why Illinois has this designation is because in the state of Illinois, there is still campus-based kind of living arrangements where people will live in large congregate settings on large acreage areas. So it's a little bit segregated or community living type where people all live together just with other people with a disability and kind of that type of community. So in Illinois, they created the acronym CILA for when a person has a home, which is 8 or less people unrelated living together in that home, which is just right along in somebody's neighborhood. So that's a designation that is not a campus-based kind of residential setting.
In the US, that is a Medicaid waiver service, part of the HCBS settings rule. Just for further clarification.
Thank you for that.
And Jesse, a question for you. This is kind of referenced earlier, but I'll kind of ask it again because an attendee asked. Where were you living before? What types of supports were you receiving before remote support? And how did the transition go?
The transition went very well. I lived in Markham, Illinois, and it was called Court Scylla. And it was a Scylla adult home. It was almost like this, but it wasn't as independent as this. And
How often did you have staff there?
I had staff there 24 hours a day. I had them morning, noon, and night.
And how many other guys were living there?
I had almost 6 to 5 other guys living there. Compared to where I was living, this is way more better.
And you said the transition went fairly smooth. It went well.
It went fairly smooth. I didn't have no issues, no problems or anything like that. You know, I actually enjoyed myself here when I first came here. I saw how much I was able to do and stuff like that. And then I just made up my mind because I'm my own guardian, so I made up my mind. I just chose to stay. My housemates didn't want me to leave, but they was like, don't go, don't go. I was like, no, this is my decision. If I want to leave, I've been wanting this for a long time. You guys want to stay, that's your decision. But my decision is to transition into something different. And that's what I did. I made that decision.
It sounds like it was the right decision for you, Jesse.
Yes, it was.
Really, really appreciate you guys sharing your expertise and your stories, because I really think that this has helped the people on this webinar. If you have further questions or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. Obviously, we want you to sign up for all of our social media and the ways to connect with us. But it has now been an hour. Jesse, Kristen, Tina, any parting words besides see ya?
Just remember each person is different. And as you continue to support each person and how they want to live their own best life, just remember to keep an open mind.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Seth?
Like Catherine said, thank you all for joining us. Again, we will be following up in just a few weeks. You'll receive an email. It'll include a link to the webinar recording, as well as a PDF version of the presentation slides. So be on the lookout in your inbox for that. Again, thank you, Envision Unlimited. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Chris, for offering ASL interpretation. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of your day.